If you found your way here, welcome to Natural AF. I'm your host, Isaac.
And I'm Alexa.
And this is an awesome show where we get to discover what it means to be Natural AF on the physical realm, emotional, psychological, spiritual, and beyond. And I love that this month has been sort of a taking care of yourself, a self-love month of February. And I said it earlier, but we hear a lot about loving others. I come from a Christian background, love others. And I want to take it back to love others like you love yourself. And if you don't love yourself, how are you going to love others? And February gets a lot of attention on buying candy and buying flowers and buying this and buying that for your Valentine. How about you just give them a better version of yourself? That's what everybody really wants.
You're not wrong. So we've got our very good friend, Stephen Leah, coming on. He's also basically a neighbor of ours. He lives in the next town over. And I'd never actually heard of Emotion Code before I met Steve. And I've lost count of how many sessions I've had with him. Isaac's also experienced Emotion Code. And I absolutely love this modality. Again, it's more of an energetic based modality, which is very similar to Psych K in that way. And I just think this is the way forward now. Like, this is what we're moving towards. It's like beyond the physical body, but it's still integrated with the physical body, especially with Emotion Code, because we talk about how emotions actually get trapped in the body. And I think that's a really important concept for people to understand. And I think, we also touch on German New Medicine in this interview, and it really does shift your perspective around the physical body and how it works, because we are energetic beings first and foremost. So I think when you're working at an energetic level, it's just, for me personally, I've had way more really profound shifts in my life using these forms of energy psychology and these energy modalities to kind of go straight to the cause, go straight to the root, which we talk about with Steve.
Yep. And this is the kind of modality that when someone's tried everything else and nothing seems to be working, they send people to Stephen to work. And they have some amazing turnarounds. He's had his own incredible story, which he'll get into in this episode, dealing with probably the most, the disease that probably claims the most lives outside of mistakes by hospitals and doctors. But we won't go into that. But so he's had to run in with cancer, and his story's profound. We've got his book. You'll see that in the episode. It's phenomenal. It's a good read.
So before we get into the episode, as always, we are self-sponsored through Natural Art Form, where Isaac here handcrafts all the most amazing natural remedies that actually work.
Yeah. And we've made a change to our discount structure. So if you've heard about us talk about our muscle repair, injury repair remedy, or any of the products we have here in Australia, including the deodorants and the sunburn and skin repair, we're offering now 10% off to listeners as many times as you want to use the code. So we just thank you so much for everyone that's been supporting us. So we just wanted to open that wide open and share the love a bit.
Yeah. So head to Natural Art Form and use the code NaturalAF10 at checkout to claim that discount. And that'll be on all orders, any order, for as long as we all shall live.
Yes. So that's the benefit of tuning in with this. The goal is just to give people an option away from pharmaceuticals that actually worked, because a lot of natural remedies are great and all, but some of them just don't really work that well. Yeah.
And we also always keep in mind making multifunctional products, which is a lot of the feedback we get is that people love that they can use it for more than one thing. So, you formulated Alleviate with workout recovery and muscle repair in mind, but now most of our customers use it for things like arthritis and fibromyalgia. And it's so multifunctional. We've had the customers even tell us things that they've used it for that we didn't even think to use it for, and it works for that as well, like blocked sinuses and sinus infections, and when it's all inflamed in that area. And then the new deodorant has a beautiful blend of essential oils that are really quite calming and soothing, so that sort of doubles as a sleep lotion. It's got lots of magnesium in it, which helps with sleep, and it's worked for me for relieving a headache, stress headache. And then the skin repair and sunburn recovery is also great for bug bites, and it kind of takes the itch away. So it lessens the amount of bottles and jars and creams and lotions and things that you have to store in your quote unquote medicine cabinet. We should create a new term for that. Your remedy cabinet.
Yeah, your remedy locker.
And of course, you can support us non-monetarily by liking this episode, subscribing wherever you're watching or listening, and sharing this episode with someone that you think will benefit and get something out of it.
All right. Well, let's get straight into it. This episode with Stephen Lair. I hope you enjoy it.
Enjoy, guys. Stephen Lair is originally from a small woodsy town outside of Boston, Massachusetts in America, and now lives in the coastal area of Byron Bay in the far north coast of New South Wales, Australia. Although holding degrees in accounting and information systems and owning a number of companies throughout his career as a systems engineer, Stephen's core interests are life, people, and the human condition. Through numerous challenging life experiences that he investigated with awareness, Stephen has realized a certain level of inner and outer freedom. His passion is helping people help themselves, just as he has helped and healed himself. He is a certified emotion code practitioner, a certified heart-based counselor, and best-selling author of the book Inner Sky. Thanks so much for joining us today, Steve.
Yeah, welcome.
Nice to see you guys.
Yeah,
thanks for having me.
Wow, so that's a very interesting bio coming from Boston.
From Boston.
And then somehow winding up in the hinterlands of Byron Bay in the literal like Fern Gully area.
I was done parking the car in Harvard Yard.
Grabbed a cup of coffee and wound up.
That's it.
Yeah. Well,
life was calling me to do something else. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. So we want to give you the floor now to kind of share more of your journey and, how you ended up from Boston, Massachusetts to the northern rivers of Australia, very different parts of the world. And what are some of the most, I guess, significant life experiences that sort of led you to where you are today and the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, I'd say my whole life has driven me to do this work that I'm doing now. We're all born into this world in this body as a spirit in a body, and we come here for certain life experiences, certain life lessons. We're here for our conscious growth. And, I was born into a situation that was very challenging. And I have not met a single person on this planet. And I travel around the world a lot. And I work with this guy who does counseling with large groups. I go to China, Japan, and Malaysia, and all these countries. The ladies of Japan have the same core issues as the ladies in Australia. Right? So it's the human condition. We're here for this. We're here for these experiences. Right? Life is a succession of experiences, and we're here for it. Right? However, I was put into a situation in a way to force me to meet my emotions. Right? And I think due to many lifetimes of avoiding my emotions as a kind of a scientific guy or whatever I was. And so my situation was from very early on, was a very, very dysfunctional household with an alcoholic mother. Right? So early on, I was very confronted. I never knew what I was stepping into. It could be very loving, and it can be totally over the top where I was overwhelmed. Right? Now, so this situation was a gift in a way from the universe because I was here to learn, about resistance. Like my whole purpose is to learn about resistance. And I became the master of resistance very early on in my childhood, right? Because resistance is all the way we avoid or fight with what's happening, right? When something's too much, we find a way to survive. And what I did was I decided I was going to bury everything. At the age of 8, I literally said, I was about to ask my teacher for help because I was really struggling. I had a note in my pocket and I was going to give it to my teacher. And I just couldn't do it, right? Because I didn't want to hurt anybody. So I left school that day and I said, I'm never going to feel anything ever again. And I will build a thick skin and nothing will bother me, right? So that was my deep dive into resistance. I was avoiding what was happening, and I decided I would bury everything I was feeling, right? Because I didn't know any other way. I had nobody to teach me another way. And so really, my whole life's purpose is the learning about resistance, becoming a master of resistance, and then becoming a master of non-resistance. And that's where I am now, or a master of unresistance, right? And to bring this message, to humanity that, we're taught the wrong thing, right? From very early on, we're taught to seek pleasure and avoid pain. And it's a really one of the worst lessons we ever get, right? Because life has pleasure and life has pain, right? There's nothing wrong with pain. Nothing wrong with it. It's natural. It's a part of life. And if pain comes, it'll just come and go, if we allow it to be there, right? However, we're taught we shouldn't feel a certain way. We shouldn't feel sadness. I shouldn't feel angry. I shouldn't get angry at my brother or my mother. So when that happens, we think we're doing something wrong, and we're like, something's not right, and I need to get rid of this. And we might fight with it. We might run from it. We might bury it. We might go into shock. All different ways to avoid, the things in life we don't like. And the most common ways we resist is we suppress it. We say it doesn't really bother us. We become addictive to drugs, alcohol, food, sex. We become very busy. We become, gym junkies, or we're workaholics. So we'll find all these ways where we don't have to feel, right? And the solution, I'm not going to say it yet, but the solution is really the opposite. Like what they teach us, the solution is the opposite to what they teach us. What they teach us is avoiding pain. And the avoidance of pain is actually what creates suffering.
Wow.
Right? So pain and suffering are not the same thing. So pain is natural, comes and goes. If you have, for example, the feeling of sadness, that might be emotional. You might think that's painful. It feels a bit painful. But if we allow it to be there, it just comes and goes. Right? Just like joy comes and goes. When joy comes in, we're having an experience, and then emotion of joy comes in. Emotions are energy in motion. They're always coming and going. It's only feedback from the universe, right? It's part of your experience. It's impersonal energy that comes into the body. Like here's joy, comes into the body. We're down the beach, and there's like dolphins and rainbows and beautiful people, and we're like, oh my God, I feel so much joy. Joy's here, and it comes and goes, right? Because we don't go, this joy is wrong. We don't typically say we need to get rid of joy. Like this joy is, I don't want this joy. We just let it be there. And it's really that simple. We're allowing it to be there. And then if sadness comes, if we treat it the same way, we can just go, because we're just a vessel for what's happening, right? And sadness comes. If we did the same thing we did with joy, like, oh, sadness is here. How interesting. Right? It's not right or wrong. Sadness is not right or wrong. It's just an energy. The universe is showing you what's happening. If we don't interfere with it, then it goes on its own. So my life, just back to my story a little bit. From the age of 8, I started burying all my emotions. I said, I'm never going to feel anything again. Right? And it worked. I survived. I had another 10 years in that house, roughly about another 10 years. It was very, very full on, right? And so I just buried everything, and it worked. And then my body's young. And what happens when we suppress emotions, they get stuck in the body, okay? Each emotion is the size of a fist, roughly. It's an energy. And it gets stuck in the body, in the organs of the body. Now, when we're young and so forth, we can cope with that. It's there, and we're coping, and we're flexible, and our body can handle it. And then finally, around 18, I went to university. I studied and got a degree in accounting and IT. I was a software engineer. And then I'm out in the workforce and doing all this. But what happens is when you trap emotions, or if you absorb them from somebody near you, then the universe wants to bring balance to you. So it brings you more experiences around the same theme to give you a message to say, hey, you've got trapped abandonment, or you got trapped betrayal, or you got trapped rejection, right? And so then, my life carries on. And of course, that's what the universe was doing. So then I might have a girlfriend and then I feel rejected or whatever, because it wasn't even the girl doing it. It was just the stuff that was already in me, right? Being triggered. So the universe was doing its thing. And then what happened was I got married, late 20s, and married a very beautiful woman. And we had 2 beautiful kids. But what played out was more and more the same theme that played out in my childhood, right? And it wasn't exactly the same, but it was a very similar theme. And then finally what happened was there was one final event. I call it the final straw event. And I got caught in between my wife, my mother, and my mother-in-law, right? And I'm just trying to keep the peace that was my strategy. And then one final thing happened, and it was this big fight between, all the women in my life. And then I got caught in the middle of it, and then I got blamed somehow. And then within about 2 weeks of that, I had cancer, right?
Wow.
So what happened was this: more emotions, right? Which is energy in motion. When all this happened, I just buried it, right? That was my way. Now, and then the body can only handle so much. So these energies get stored in the organs of the body, and really we're vibrational beings, and the organs are vibration, right? They're cells spinning. When they're healthy, they're very high vibration. And I was compacting in their anger or resentment or whatever it was, right? With this event, it was the one final straw, and I just put a little bit more of that, trapped emotions into my body, also called the pain body, right? And then the cells couldn't take any more. There was no more space. And the energy of emotion, energy affects energy. So the organs are energy, the emotions are energy, but the emotions are unconscious, low vibration, dense energy. The organ, say it's the liver, so I'm compounding, putting these emotions in there. And so this low vibration, dense energy of emotions is affecting the organ, where finally, right, the cells responded with cancer, right? Which is just like chaotic growth. They had enough. It was too much, right? And in a way, it was the universe. Cancer is not the enemy. Cancer is a messenger. And it's the universe saying, you got to deal with this now or you're dead, right? It's like the universe getting in your face saying, the way you've been approaching life, it doesn't work, right? And so it was a big, big tap on the shoulder. And because I was dead, I was going to die, something inside me shifted, and something inside me said, well, I'm dead anyway, so let's investigate. And that was the beginning. I was age 38. That was the beginning to a very, very fast shift in my consciousness, where within about 2 months of that event, I ended up meeting this amazing German doctor. He was no longer a medical doctor. He was more a metaphysical teacher, spiritual teacher. He was a famous counselor and therapist across many countries. He lives in the Byron Bay area. His name's Rahasha, or Dr. Kraft, German guy. And I met this guy. I didn't even know why I was there to be with him. And he took me into a room for a counseling session, and he guided me into my first meditation. Right? It's a longer story than this, but I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah.
He took me in my first meditation. Right? I was always curious about it, but I didn't understand it. I didn't get it. And that was very, very profound experience. Like, I could talk about that for 10 minutes, what happened. I come out of that experience, and then he says, I felt some issue around, the subject of your wife. Would you like to come back for another session tomorrow? And I did. That was another profound experience. That was a different kind of a counseling session. At the end of that session, he says, Stephen, I want to invite you to a course. It's called Counseling from the Heart. It's a counselor's training program. And it's a 6-day course, and it starts on Sunday. And he hands me this leaflet, and it says, uses advanced meditation and all these other techniques. It's for doctors and nurses and psychiatrists and all these types of people. And I'm reading, and my whole being, because I still had a lot of resistance, my whole being just said, no. Right? So I decided no on the spot. I said, no. I didn't speak it out. I said, why are you inviting me to this? I said, I've only meditated once. I don't have any of these skills. And he says, well, go home and meditate on it and you will know. And so when I did, something happened. I won't go into it. The story's too long. But I joined that course. And what happened in that course was, he was teaching the art of non-resistance. He was teaching us how to actually meet our pain body, and in a very different way, in a very heart-based way. And then we had a lot of one-on-one sessions that you had to use real life, situations. And I'll jump ahead to say, on the 5th day of the course, I had a complete and total spontaneous healing of cancer.
Wow.
When I met the core thing, which was trapped anger, right? And what came up in that session, because it was quite a profound day, I could talk for 2 hours on this, what happened that day. But in that day, I woke up with such anxiety, and I thought I was losing my mind, right? So we had 4 days of the course already. And on the 5th day, I woke up, and I'm like, I never had anxiety before. I had intense anxiety, and I thought I was losing my mind. And I wasn't going to go to the course, and I was trying to run away. I wanted to run. And then my friend forced me to go to the course in a way. And then that day, I sat with Rahasha that morning, and he said, Stephen, what's going on? I said, I didn't want to come. I think I've got so much anxiety. And he just says, hallelujah, praise the Lord. You're not losing your mind. This is a wonderful thing. He says, what's happening is you're touching the core. So I had peeled back the layers in the first 4 days, and then I was touching this core thing. That was, when we suppress things, they get repressed into our subconscious, right? So I didn't even know, I had no idea what this monster was. I really had no idea. But in that session that afternoon, it was quite profound what happened. But the vision that came up, after my jaw shut, I couldn't speak in the session. I was the client. The other person was the counselor. My jaw went shut. I couldn't speak for 5 minutes. She drew me out of it. And then this thing came up from my subconscious, and I was a giant rubber band, like, a meter by half a meter, being pulled in two directions. Love pulling on one end and anger pulling on the other end. Right? And I knew exactly, and then the rubber band was breaking in the middle, and that was me. Okay? So I knew what it was, and it was suppressed anger, right? And I never allowed myself to get angry towards my mother, right? In this instance, right? So
Yeah.
I didn't even feel I was allowed to as a kid. Like, it was like, that's my mother. I'm not going to get angry at her, right? So anyway, so when this came up, I knew what it was, and then a whole bunch of things happened. But part of what happened was the cells. I had colon cancer, and my whole body in that area was shaking uncontrollably, and then it just burst, and then this energy just came up my body, and it surrounded me, and I just welcomed it,
Wow.
And it was the release of that pain body, right, which was traumatic pain body, you could say. And then it was like done. The cancer was gone. I felt like the 1,000-pound gorilla was no longer on my back. I felt light as a feather. I was in such a heightened state of love. My consciousness shifted massively. Like this massive thing happened, right? So that's kind of a long story, and there's much more to it. But my path was to be faced with a situation, to learn about resistance, to become resistant, and then to learn all about unresistance. And that's kind of what happened. And now I've taken that to another degree, with the work that I'm doing now and so forth. But that's kind of a snapshot, which kind of, after that event, I still have my software company in Sydney, and I kept that for a while. But every cell in my body wanted to move into this work to help other people. Like every day I was going to work, it was like every cell in my body was saying, no, you need to write this book. Because what happened to me was not a miracle. What happened to me was the law of nature. Right? So there's two laws. There's a law of resistance, which is whatever you resist persists. Right? It's a law of nature. Whatever you resist persists. Right? So if I resist, this anger towards this person, well, that anger is it's going to be in you, and it's going to grow, because then more experiences of anger will come. And then the law of unresistance, or the law of non-resistance, is what they don't teach us. This is the most important thing. Become one with your hurtful experience, and it dissolves. Right? You become one with the hurt. So if something in the past, if you become one with it, it dissolves. Or even in the moment, if you're having an experience. So this morning, that's a good example. This morning I went to the farmer's market, right? And there's a lady that works on one of the vegetable stalls, and we always have a bit of a chat, and she's a friend of mine. And I just said, hey, how you going? She goes, oh, Steve, I had this, she lost her dog, right? She has a dog she was really close with. The dog passed away about 6 months ago. And I had my dog with me. So I said, how you going? And she goes, Steve, I had this really profound dream, and my dog came into my dream, and it just gave me so much love. It put its head right here on my shoulder. And she said, then I felt lifted up, and the dog took me outside, and then the dog was gone, right? And she said, the whole next day I was crying in sadness. She said, I couldn't stop crying. I was in so much sadness. I was so sad. And I just said to her, I said, and there's nothing wrong with sadness, right? And she kind of went, oh. Because right. She was feeling sadness, which is a pain. Pain, it's like emotional pain. And there really is nothing wrong with sadness. Sadness is just a feedback from the universe as to what's happening, right? It's an emotion that's always going to come and go unless you fight with it. And and it's an impersonal energy. It's actually not you. But she had this feeling of sadness, and then she thought she was sad, right? And she was feeling bad because she was feeling, I shouldn't feel sad, right?
Yeah.
So it gets caught up in our identity, and it just perpetuates, right? And I just said to her, because this is the truth. She said, I had this sadness, and I was crying all day. And I said, and she said, and I said, yeah, and there's nothing wrong with sadness. And she just went, she'd never heard this before, right? And she goes, oh. And she goes, I said, yeah, you can welcome it. It's just it's a impersonal energy. It's just visiting you.
And I think it's so important for people to just understanding that concept and then allowing the expression of whatever those emotions are, because I think that's what, and again, you look at the way we're conditioned as children, and it doesn't come from a bad place, but when a child's chucking a tantrum, what are their parents always telling them? Stop it. Stop behaving like that. Stop. But it's like they need to express that. And you see it in children all the time. They'll be chucking a tantrum one minute. The next minute they're running around, they're happy, they're laughing again.
Exactly.
So, yeah, we've been very conditioned out of just expressing exactly how we're feeling at that moment in time, because you're right, when we do that, it just passes through. It doesn't stick around. But we're so conditioned from a very young age to just kind of, like you said, kind of stuff everything down and not just let it out.
And that's where the problem is. The problem is not the emotion, right? That's trapped, right? That we didn't meet. So we have a situation and it's full on, and we just go, no, that's too much, and so we trap the emotion. It's not about the emotion. Like, I'll just pick a few. Fear is not bad. Longing is not a problem. Betrayal is not good or bad. Failure is not good or bad. Conflict is not good or bad. It's just energy, right? It's just feedback, right? So if you're in an experience and suddenly you're feeling fear, that comes because something's not right.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's some creepy guy walking and suddenly you're feeling fear, and it's like to get your body ready to run. Right? So it comes with a reason. But when we feel I shouldn't feel this way, or I don't want to feel this, like it's heartache, which is a common one where people are in long-term relationships and then something happens and we feel betrayed, we feel heartache, and we're like, no, I'm done with that guy. I'm done with that girl, whatever. He's an idiot anyway. And we just don't meet it, right? The key is if we have an experience and we meet the experience, right? That means we allow whatever we're feeling. Then we don't trap anything. But once it's trapped, the issue is that it's an energy stuck in the body. That's the issue. It's not about the emotion. Yes, that emotion will be triggered because the universe is showing it to you so that you can meet it, right? That's all that's happening. But when it's trapped in the body, it's an energy, and energy doesn't want to be stuck, right? So energy wants to move, and so therefore it gets triggered. So this is really important, what I'm going to say here. So if we ever have an experience or a situation with a person or a situation where we get triggered, right? So say you're married and something happens and you feel taken for granted, right? Your husband does something or your wife does something, and you worked all day, you made this beautiful dinner for your husband, and he comes home and he just like sits on the couch. He goes, oh, I went to the pub and I had a beer with my mates and whatever. I'm not, I don't want your dinner, right? So you get triggered, and you feel taken for granted or something like this. If you get triggered, doesn't matter what it is. If you get triggered, it's because there's something already trapped in you. All right? So the universe will bring you those people into your life, including your husband or wife. They pick the right people for you, for your growth, right? Because if you have something trapped, like I had a lot of stuff trapped from my childhood, and the universe brought me the perfect woman, right? Now, was she an easy woman? No, right? No, she was not an easy woman, but I needed to meet her. I needed to be with her, right? Because I needed to meet this stuff, right? Because it was gonna. Well, as you can see, I ended up getting cancer, right? Because I was still not meeting it. And in her being there as my mirror, more and more the same stuff was just playing out over and over and over again. And that's what happens, because when you have something trapped, the universe will present it to you again and again and again. It's like a pattern that will play out. But the universe will get louder and louder and louder. It'll get in your face. Like for me, the final one was cancer. It was like, it kept bringing the same thing to me again and again and again. Then cancer. So it'll get in your face. It's doing it lovingly.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're not listening. The universe speaks through experiencing. By giving you experiences, it's communicating to you. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was in the colon. Was there
Yep.
any stats the doctors tried to give you where they're like, oh, you've got this much to live, and you know how they typically do?
Luckily, no.
Okay.
Luckily, no. And I didn't do chemo. I didn't do radiation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I just remember one of our family friends passed away several years back of colon cancer, and it was fast. It was like it came on, and I don't even know, like weeks later, he'd passed away.
Yeah, right.
And I have no idea what was going on in his life, but I can imagine there's probably, if people really peer into their stories about like just leading up to that point where you were diagnosed, if they hear this story and they're like, oh, like when my diagnosis happened, this is what's going on in my life. Like, is that something that you've heard back from other people with cancer where they've had this pinnacle moment?
Yeah. Well, usually, prior to cancer or something big happening, there's usually like a significant event, right? Like a crisis event or a conflict event.
Sure.
And there's a great doctor in Germany called Dirk Hammer who's tracked cancers for, German New Medicine, right? He's tracked cancer. He's tracked all diseases known to man and over about a 15-year period. And he's tracked the core conflict event to what happens in the body, in the brain, because it first happens on the level of the psyche. And then the body follows, the cells follow the psyche, okay? The body follows the mind. So the psyche gets affected, and then wherever that area of the brain is that affects that organ, it then affects that organ. So, yes, some people have a pinnacle moment where they, like in my case, it was when I was diagnosed, I had 3 days of complete hysteria, right? I had 2 young kids. And I would go up to the shower and that would be my place where I could let go. And I'd just be crying hysterically and angry and I'm going to fucking beat cancer and whatever I was saying. I don't remember. But I was fighting with cancer, right? Because that's what I was taught. Cancer is the enemy. We need to kill it, right? And I was fighting with cancer. And then what happened was I'm in that shower on the 3rd day. I had, again, this moment of hysteria, uncontrollable crying, and then something went, and I heard this voice and it said, are you going to be a victim and die? Or are you going to choose to live? Right? So it was I don't know where it came from. It was very clear. Are you gonna be a victim and die, or are you gonna live? And I said, "There's no effing way I'm gonna die and not be here for my kids." Right?
Yeah.
And it was in that moment. It was very quick. It's very quick, and so my will was to survive. Right. So there is that point I think that everybody comes to where they make a decision if they get that voice or not. And fundamentally, you need to make a decision. Some people are ready to go, or they don't want to fight, or they have no reason to live, and they just go, oh, I don't know, right? But mine was there's no way, right? And then, so what happened in that moment was this. Right after that moment, I'm still in the shower, and what happened was I said to myself, I don't want to die, but I might die, all right? So what was happening was when I was diagnosed, I was resisting cancer. It's still a story of resistance. I'm fighting with cancer. I'm going to punch it out. I'm going to kill it. Right? In that moment, I said, no. There was some divine thing happening. I said, no, I'm going to live. There's no way I'm not going to be here for my kids. Then something inside me just said, okay, I want to live, but I might die. So I stopped fighting with the death. This is key. I stopped fighting with death. I don't know how it happened. I stopped fighting with death, right? I wasn't in resistance to death anymore. And in that lack of resistance to what was happening, I stepped out of the shower, and I was in total presence. Right? I was in the microsecond. And I remember I walked downstairs, and then my kids came home. They were like, oh, so young. I forget, 5 and 3 or 6 and 4. They came home, and I was just like, I had never been in the moment so minutely in that moment until that point in time. And they step in the door, and I'm like, oh my God, how beautiful is this, right? And then we got out the blocks. We always played with the blocks. We built the blocks up, and then we knocked it over, and then whatever. And like, I was in complete bliss.
Yeah.
Like it was. I was so totally in the moment because I didn't know if I'd be around the next moment, right?
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of the shift of my consciousness, all right? And a whole bunch of other things happened where my body spoke to me. But that's, I don't know if you want to go into that, but
Yeah. Well, and I was going to mention before, because a lot of the stories you've told are in the book, and we've got the book here. I don't know, is it going to be reversed in this? We'll pop it up on the screen anyway, but I read your book. I loved it. It's such an easy read.
Yeah,
so it's
easy.
really for anyone, and especially for, and I think you told me that you wrote this with that in mind, that you wanted anyone to be able to read it. So people that didn't have, this spiritual awareness, or, if they just had no idea, but they're really ill and want to look at something different, this is a great book to read, because you introduce these concepts in a really simple and easy to understand way.
Yeah.
And so, for anyone that wants to hear more of the stories, because you obviously go way more in depth with the stories and your experiences, and those really profound experiences that you had. And I love that it's got on the front, life begins where resistance ends. And I remember that really resonated for me when I met you, and I remember you first saying that, because it's so true. It's like, and also I just want to bring up quickly that, you've brought up, like just in your experience and the way you explain it, and then you've brought up German new medicine and how that kind of resonates on the same level. And when I think about I'm learning a lot more about the nervous system now and how the nervous system works. It's pretty much exactly what you're saying, just described in a different way.
Right on. Yep.
And the work that I do with Psych K and how we're, rewriting subconscious, it's all the same thing. And, just in a different, just packaged up differently. And I often say this is that when you start to talk to all these different people, and they're all coming from different schools of thought, but they're basically all saying the same thing. Like, to me, that's what resonates as truth. And, that's why this just, spoke to me. Spoke to me on so many levels. And, I've obviously done a lot of work with you. Isaac's done, we've both done Emotion Code with you, and love it. And that's what I love, because there is no one way. There isn't like, go and do this thing and it's going to cure you. It's like, there's all these different modalities, different things work for different people. And
absolutely.
Yeah. And I love the combination of, especially doing like Psych K and rewriting the subconscious, but then working specifically with the emotions that are trapped in the body. So can you explain a little more about Emotion Code and how it works? And also, I guess the connection with German new medicine and your understanding of that, because we also love German new medicine, and we haven't had anyone on to discuss that yet, but we definitely will. But if you just want to speak to that a little bit as well.
Okay, great. I'll start with German new medicine, and then I'll go into the Emotion Code. Because what is German new medicine saying? German new medicine saying we have an experience which is a core conflict event, some sort of conflict, right? And then what happens is we go into this. We're no longer in equilibrium within our body, right? We're in a conflict. We're like we haven't dealt with it yet. We have not dealt with it. It's like it's still in my head. It's like that person, I'm going to see him at work tomorrow, and it's like I'm going to get angry again, or whatever it is, whatever's going on. So the conflict's happening, right? What German new medicine says is that healing does not begin until we resolve the conflict, right? German new medicine does not say how to resolve the conflict. It just says, it'll tell you what the core conflict is. If you have pancreatic cancer, for example, you can reverse it back and you can say, this is anger towards family. It's an inheritance conflict, as an example, right? So, but fundamentally German New Medicine, which is amazing, and it's mapped every core conflict to the physiological issue that will happen in the body if it's unresolved, if you still resist it, right? So conflict involves resistance. There's somebody you're having a conflict with, may that be somebody else or yourself, or somebody's done something to you, or whatever it is, right? So there's a resistance. You're fighting with that experience, right? And we could say it's a kind of like a trauma. Trauma, is a kind of a very, very compelling story where there's something dramatic that happened and we resisted it. We couldn't meet it. It was too full on, right? And now that trauma or that energy or that experience, right, can be trapped in the body as trapped emotions, right? But trauma can also be held in the body, in the tissue, not as a trapped emotion. It can also be held in your energy field, in the subtle body, right? So we have to deal with the conflict, right? We have to meet that conflict. So, and that's really what the solution is. I'm going to read you a quote from one of my teachers, Rahasha, Dr. Kraft, right? Mm-hmm. He says that before the physical body gets sick, the psyche gets sick, right? The energy of the person gets disturbed. This is the conflict, right? And the psyche gets affected. This advances to disease in our resistance to the experience of what's here. So if we have this conflict and it's still going on and we still resist it, right? And sometimes we get very attached to it because it becomes who we are, right? Like I'm this victim to my brother, right? And he's done this to me, and everywhere I go, that's my story. I'm going to tell everyone my story. And we become this conflict, right? And we don't deal with it because, often we get stuck and we don't want to release it because then I don't know who I am, right? Anyway, but that's it. So we're resisting something, and that's the cause. That's the cause of the suffering. That's the cause of it getting stuck in the body. And yes, sometimes we get blindsided where we get attacked and we don't see it coming, so we can't meet it. However, suffering is a choice, right? People don't know that suffering is a choice. Suffering is not natural, right? Pain is natural, suffering is not natural, right? And suffering is a choice. Suffering will only stay there while you're resisting it, either consciously or unconsciously, okay? So that leads us to the emotion code. So basically, a lot of people have had a lot of things happen in their life, traumas, or whatever's happening in the current moment, and they couldn't meet those experiences, or they absorbed stuff from their parents when they were kids. You can absorb emotions. You can also inherit trapped emotions. That's a whole nother subject. Like we could do a whole topic on that. Mm-hmm. It's very important. Ancestral trapped emotions, where the patterns of the family come down, you just get born with it, okay? They're trapped emotions that you inherit. So if these things are in your body, then you can, like as you said, do Psych-K, you can do emotion code, you can do counseling and therapy, you can do all these things. Now, I'm trained in counseling and therapy, and I've done that for a while, but counseling is what saved my life, right? That spontaneous healing. Counseling is fantastic. Now, what are we doing? The objective with Psych-K, counseling, and emotion code is the only thing that knows what's wrong with you is the subconscious mind, right? That's the only thing. The conscious mind will be wrong, right? I have people come in and they go, Stephen, I want to deal with this issue. I've got, an issue with my neck. Nobody can find anything that's wrong with it. And I've had it for 10 years and I've been to every doctor on the planet and physio and nobody can fix it, right? And then they go, I think it has to do with, and they'll come up with some story. I was in Germany and climbed the tree. My father said, get down, and I didn't do it. And I fell out of the tree and I ruined everybody's holiday and we had to come home, right? Whatever, right? So I just say, great. I say, great. And then I'll say, let's see what your subconscious has to say. Right? It's literally the only thing that knows, because your subconscious knows everything about you. It's a supercomputer for you. Right? It knows what happened, when it happened, how you got hurt, how you perceived the event. It holds your kind of conditioning and belief system. Right? Your whole being is in your subconscious. All the things that were suppressed and repressed, the subconscious knows what they are. So, and your subconscious is a supercomputer for you, right? And so I was doing counseling and therapy for a while, but I found it, I thought there must be a more efficient way, right? Because with counseling, you got the client and a counselor, and then the counselor is guiding the client using typically a story as a gateway or doorway through the conscious mind to get to the subconscious, right? The thing is, you're working with the conscious mind to get to the subconscious. And the conscious mind is often the thing that said, and the ego is included in the conscious mind. That's often the thing that said, I don't want to feel this thing, right? So when you get through it, you got a great counselor, you're about to meet that thing. Sometimes what happens is the ego or the conscious mind diverts you and you don't meet it, right? And then you get active, you kind of leave the counseling session activated because you relive the story. The mind doesn't know the difference between a thought and reality. So the mind thinks it's happening again and you leave activated, right? So I just saw that as a slight limitation. And I just thought there must be a better way. And a couple of years later, I was turned on to the emotion code. So the emotion code does what counseling and therapy does, but it does it more direct. Right? So in the emotion code, we're just working directly with the subconscious mind. Right? It's happy to answer our questions, right? And we don't use story as a doorway. We just use what's happening as a statement to ask the subconscious mind what's causing this, right? So, for example, I've had many people with physical body issues or anxiety, or they've got a blockage in their life, or they don't let anybody in, their heart's blocked, or whatever it might be. So I can write a very simple statement to ask their subconscious mind directly. Say the person's name, Susan. So Susan comes in and she's got an issue with the left side of her neck. And she says it's happened 3 years ago and nobody can fix it, or 5 years ago. And whenever she does a certain thing, she gets a sharp pain down her side. So I'll write a statement that'll say, there's a trapped emotion in Susan causing or contributing to issues with the left side of her neck. Right? It's just a very simple, broad statement that I'll ask her subconscious mind. And then with her permission in the emotion code, I'll connect to her subconscious mind directly. And then there's a kinesiology component of this. So then once I connect, I can use kinesiology to decode what's happening, to decode what her subconscious says. Right? And then I'll just ask her subconscious. There's a trapped emotion in Susan causing or contributing to issues with the left side of her neck. All right? Yes or no? Yes or no? If I get a yes, then I'll find out how many. And I'll say the number of trapped emotions in Susan causing or contributing to issues with the left side of her neck is between 1 and 5, 5 and 10. Yes, is it 5, 6? 6 trapped emotions. Then I read the statement 6 times, and then her subconscious will tell me exactly what the emotion is, right? And I use this chart of emotions where I can decode and find out exactly what the emotion is. I'll find out if it's inherited emotion, if it's absorbed, if she absorbed it from a loved one, or if she trapped it herself. So with each trapped emotion, it gets identified, decoded, which is like the story. Where did it come from? When was it trapped? If it was inherited, where did it come from? Your grandmother on your mother's side, right? And what happened to her? I can find that out too, right? And then, so identify, decode, release, right? So it's very, very direct. So we're just asking your subconscious, what's causing this issue? May it be physical, emotional, or a blockage, or a pattern. Like, whenever so say it's a girl every boyfriend she meets is a narcissist, right? So she's like, I met another guy, I thought he was great, but he's a narcissist, right? So we would say there's a trapped emotion in Samantha in relation to her, all her boyfriends being narcissists, or whatever the statement is, right? The subconscious will tell us what it is, and we identify it and release it. Very, very direct. It's super effective. It's very efficient.
And I love that you said,
and it works.
Steve. Absolutely. And I mean, I can definitely vouch that it works. And I love that you said earlier that, we think we know. We think we have the story and we think we know, because every single session I've done with you, the emotions that have come up, I'm just like, really? And then we ask the questions. Yeah, I'm just like, really? I don't, you wouldn't consciously, you wouldn't, because we often tell ourselves the story too that, oh, I don't feel angry. I'm not an angry person.
Right
or,
on.
I didn't feel that way about that thing because, consciously that's the ego. It's all to keep us safe. So consciously we told ourselves that story because it makes us feel better and it keeps us safe. But the unconscious holds all of it. And it can be quite shocking when some of this stuff comes up. You're like, really? And then I love that we ask the questions and we see like where, and then it always makes sense. Like it always resonates.
100%.
Yeah, and especially with the things that, I mean, just speaking from my own experience, with the things that come up from childhood, especially because for me and a lot of people I speak to, you often don't remember a lot from your childhood. But again, the unconscious remembers everything. It has a record of everything.
So the conscious mind is it's very clever in that when something's too much or it's we don't want to feel this thing or whatever, we will habitually start to do it. And then we suppress it originally, but the mind is very clever and it pushes it deep into our repression. So like this thing that had cancer. So behind the cancer was a story, a long held story, right? And I had buried that so deep because it was so painful that I buried it so deeply, the mind did. It's a survival technique, right? It was so full on. It's like, I never want to know anything about this again. And it's so buried, I have no idea what it is. Yet the universe knows. And of course, the subconscious mind knows. And therefore, when it's buried deep, we don't know what it is. And that's often the scary bit. It's like, on that day, when I felt I was losing my mind in that course, I had no idea what it was. And that day, when we had to go pick our counselor, there was 15 clients and 15 counselors. I picked a very soft lady. I said, oh, that'll be my counselor, right? Because I knew something big was coming. And I went to her, and somebody picked her first. And I'm like, oh, shit. So I step back, and I look around, and I'm like, oh, the only one left is the crazy lady, right? Right? And I'm like, oh, shit, right? So I go in front of this lady. She had no neck, right? No neck. She was like, she looked right through me. She didn't greet me. In her session, she was screaming all the time.
Really?
Oh, she was, right? She was crazy, right? So I stand in front of her, and I'm like, oh, shit, right? And then something inside me said, she's tough enough. Like it was so set up that I had her. She's tough enough. There's something inside of me that's because I was so afraid of what was coming up. I didn't know what it was. So it's often what keeps people beyond in front of the door of resistance, where they don't go through the door of resistance. Like I had a friend this weekend who came for a special session. She's got extreme anxiety and stress and PTSD. And it's so full on, she could barely get out of bed. And she just didn't want to come, right? And the sessions have been delayed 2 weeks. And she finally came this weekend. And the session was just amazing, and it's gone, right? The anxiety's totally gone, right? And she's had it for 2 years. Because she was in resistance to the unknown. She didn't know what it was. And it's really so simple. It's like 1 second meeting what we've held down, right? That energy releases, right? And that energy is not a monster. It's just impersonal energy. Because the universe brought you rejection. The universe brought you sadness. The universe brought you horror or terror, right? It's just an energy that's coming and going, and then it gets trapped in certain circumstances, right? Like war. So a grandfather that's in the war, he's getting bombed. He goes into terror, and then he goes, if I go into terror now, I'm dead. So he pushes the terror down. He gets out of the war. He gets home. He's a messy guy. He's shaky. He's messy. He makes love with his wife, and then his son's born, and the son's born with terror. Because that son's being born into an environment with this terror. And if that son doesn't deal with that terror, because it'll play out in his life, and he has a baby, it's inherited in that baby too. It keeps going until one person meets it, then it releases in everybody. So,
wow, I love that what you said there, when it releases in everybody, and the idea of the generational memory, the generational trauma, and then like I grew up Christian, and we're told like the sins of the father are passed down to the son, and
right on.
Without the label sin, because that's like a very weighted, very, I think, misunderstood translation.
Yeah,
it's like these things that are creating resistance within us. I would say that's sin. Like that's just resistance within us to whatever. And
it's a misunderstanding.
That's
what sin is to me. So it's a misunderstanding.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because it's what you're describing. I know in like every fiber of my being now, like this resonates true because I've seen this, I've felt it, I've seen myself create stories. Like one of the titles in your book, our story is never the truth, and I've been very attached to stories, and I've also been on the other end going through marital counseling and stuff with someone who's very attached to their story.
Yeah,
and everyone else can see the outside of it that like it's a story. But the one with the story that's holding on to it, it's like a part of their identity, is causing them more suffering.
Totally.
And they're the only person that can release it. I mean,
absolutely.
Unless they met you.
And so that's why the whole book's about resistance, right? Because the book is showing you that it's resistance that's causing us to stay stuck in the conflict, right?
Yeah.
Which is German New Medicine. It's like healing does not begin until you resolve the conflict. That's at a psyche level, right? That's at a mental level. You have to deal with that. Then the body heals on its own, right? So when people come to see me and then, somebody's had a very traumatic long-term relationship and it suddenly ends and the guy's cheated on her and he's with a younger girl and whatever, and it's a very full-on situation with this person, then we release the emotions, right? Usually a lot of it is inherited emotions that person came into their life because the universe wanted this inherited stuff cleared for everybody, right? So often it's inherited and absorbed trapped emotions. And then, right, that's why this person's appeared in their life. And, of course, there's often their own trapped emotions. But then when it's released, then I will ask their subconscious how many days of body processing, right? And that's where the body's coming back into its normal balanced vibration. Wherever these organs were stuck in the body. And then this is the conflict resolved, okay? This is the German New Medicine. You know the chart, right? Mm-hmm. And so once the conflict's resolved, then there's a healing process. The body does it on its own. Mm-hmm. You just let go. So when people finish up a session with me and we've released whatever, 12 or 15 trapped emotions around some big event, right? Inherited, absorbed in their own, I'll test. And I'll say, okay, you've got 5 days of body processing. That means your body's going to come back into balance vibrationally. So the environment changes first, right? This changes, wherever those trapped emotions were. The environment changes. And then the cells follow whatever we give them. This is important, right? The healing. So if the cells have been damaged because anger's been hammering the liver, and it's been compounding, and the liver's a bit dysfunctional. We release that energy that's causing it. Then the liver restores its energetic balance, and then the cells follow that energetic balance. The cells will just heal themselves, right? It's just like two twins. You have twins, right? They both get adopted out. One goes into a very healthy, loving home. One goes into a very dysfunctional, broken home, right? this kid's going to grow up and be a very balanced, beautiful individual. And this kid is going to, he's going to be in jail by age 21, right? On drugs, right? So it's the environment. We're changing the environment by releasing the low vibration, unconscious, dense energy. All emotions that are trapped are unconscious energies because somebody didn't meet them. It could have been your grandfather in the war where he didn't meet his terror that you then inherited and you got terror, right? Or it's something that you had an experience and you didn't meet it, right? So if it's trapped, it's because it's unconscious energy. Unconscious energy on the level of human consciousness is low vibration, dense energy. It's life diminishing energy, right? You release that life diminishing energy and the body does its thing.
Yeah. Steve, is there a way to, like, in your opinion, to meet, like, let's say your grandfather in the war, to meet the terror? What would that look like if you actually met it instead of just repressing it?
So in the emotion code, right, because most modalities won't find this stuff. The emotion code finds it straight up. Right. So I'm going to ask the question. There's a trapped emotion in Tom, whereby he's got a pattern of being abused and terror or whatever. Right. So say I ask that question, and then there's 10 trapped emotions or 5 trapped emotions, and then the first one comes up. If there's any inherited trapped emotions, in my sessions they come up first. Right. All of them, for whatever reason, I don't know why. But say then it'll come up, and I'll say, okay. Is there a trapped emotion in Tom causing terror? Yes. Is it inherited? Yes, it is. What trapped emotion is it? Is it in column A, column B? Is it in row 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? And then I'll say, test it. So say it comes up with terror. It's trapped emotion of terror. It's inherited terror. Then I'll test it. I'll say, okay, this inherited terror that Tom was born with, not his energy. This was first trapped in its ancestors 1 generation ago, 2 generations ago, or whatever it is. And so say it points to the grandfather. Then I'll find out at what age the grandfather trapped the terror. And then often I'm kind of shown what it is.
Yeah.
Or that person is, my client will see it because we're both in a subconscious space. So with the emotion code, we're not reliving it.
Yeah.
Right? The subconscious identifies it, and then we just release it.
Yeah, but what I was getting at more was, like, in the moment, someone that met the situation versus repressed it. And where I come from in the military with what we're taught, and statistics show this out too, special forces troops will have lower overall instances of PTSD, much lower than
what type of troops?
line.
Sorry, what type of troops?
Like special forces, like the more higher tier trained people. And part of that is because there is a lot more proactive, like meeting the violence, like you're trained to an absurd degree on initiating conflict. And like every time there's a battle, you measure out, can we meet this or do we have to retreat and then regroup and go back? But there's always a go back. There's never a point where you lose. And I wonder if something like that, because if you're in a situation, let's say you're in a domestic violence situation or you're in like a car accident or something like that. Yeah. Is there a way to, in that moment, meet the situation so that you don't have to later go and
I think I know what you're getting at. So in kind of the military, right? So the special forces guys, they calculate, so they're not being surprised as much, right? And they're kind of aware of what might happen, and they kind of reduce the percentage of risk, right? Or they might have to do it anyway, but they know there's a risk, so they're kind of taking that risk. Whereas if you're in the army and then you're out in the battlefield and then you're not expecting something to happen and suddenly a bomb lands next to you, right? Or there's a mine. So it's like you're being blindsided. Yeah. When you're blindsided, you can't meet it. Right? That's the issue. When you're blindsided, you trap it instantly.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? What was the third example you gave me? You said,
well, I was thinking of things like let's say a car accident or something. Kind of like the same thing, blindsided.
Absolutely. So that's exactly it. So I have a good friend. and he lives nearby here. This is a woodsy area. He got in his car at 5 a.m. Very, very dark road, lots of trees. Came around a corner. It was foggy. There's a big cow right in front of him. Pregnant mother.
Oh.
He had 2 seconds. Bang, right? And his car's destroyed. The cow's everywhere. And and so I just said, he called me and he goes, oh, I just hit this, he went to work and he was shaky. And I said, come here and we'll just check if there's any trapped emotions, right? So he had 3 trapped emotions. I don't remember exactly what they were, but one was like helplessness. I think one was terror or something. Terror, yeah, or panic. And I forget there was one other one. So because he had no time to meet that, if you can't meet the experience, you trap the emotions. Right? Done. Right? So when there's traumatic events, people trap a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and that resonates a lot with like from the nervous system perspective. So the way that Sarah Baldwin explains this, she's a nervous system expert, and I listen to her podcast a lot. Basically, the way she explains it is that trauma is basically exactly what you're saying, where because you can't process the experience as it's happening, it's too much for you. Yeah. It gets basically held in the body as trauma.
Totally.
Yeah.
And trauma will be held, trauma comes in many forms. Trauma can be held as trapped emotions, right? So if you had trauma and it was trapped emotions, so the emotion code will find it, right? It'll just clear that. Now, lately, it's funny we're talking about this. So I've just started doing trauma sessions, right? Because we can release all the trapped emotions, and we've dealt with 85, 90% of the deal, right? But in some occasions, there's still something going on with the person, and it's because of what you just said. We can have a trauma that has an emotional component, but it also has an energetic component that's stuck in the tissue, right? In the somatic memory or in the energy. It could be an energetic trauma component that's stuck in your field. Your field is a subtle body, or it could be your meridian, it could be your chakras. Now, these type of things block the flow of energy in the body. It kind of interferes. And there's also can be like a memory, a muscle memory, you could say, or whereby, and this has happened to me, right? So where I was in a situation was I wasn't expecting something to happen, and then this person just went nuts, screaming at me, right? It was just like a situation like my childhood, right? And so it was just like a imbalanced person, unexpected. It came out of the blue, and I just went right into shock. I just went right into shock. I was gone. I was like, right? So that's a trauma that was stuck physically in my tissues, because it's not like a feeling. It's not like an emotion, right? It's stuck in the tissue and it gets activated, right? And so now I'm doing trauma sessions, right? Just started doing it for a couple of months now. This is the trauma chart. So very similar to the emotion code.
Yeah.
Whereby I just connect to the subconscious. So what I've been doing at my sessions now is I do the emotion code session, and we're releasing something around, this very dramatic, separation where the husband did whatever he did or the wife did whatever she did. We release everything, and then I'm just checking, and I change a statement to be, instead of, is there a trapped emotion in Susan? I'll say, is there a trapped or stuck trauma in Susan? And I'll use the same statement, and I'll ask the subconscious. It's been very profound what's been happening. Very profound. And then I'll use this chart to decode it, and then I'll check where did it come from. What I'm finding is that trauma stuck in the physical body can be inherited. Right? So you're born with it. I haven't come across any that are absorbed yet. Right? You can't absorb a trauma stuck in the physical body or the energy field. But of course, you can trap a trauma yourself in the physical body. Right? So I think it's like you said, it's a very acute situation. We have no control over it, or it's like a repeated something, and you get so overloaded that there's an emotional component often, but then So what this session is doing is releasing it from the body. Okay, and so far the feedback from the clients are unbelievable. Like,
That's awesome.
amazing.
Yeah,
Because it's just so direct.
Yeah, and it's such incredible work. Like, it's just very interesting now seeing a lot of these more energy-based modalities being used now, and I think it's very necessary, because that's when I first came across emotion code, and I came across Psych K around the same time, and then I did my training, and I was like, it's so similar, and we've both experienced each other's modalities, and there's so many similarities, and I think it's so important now to be doing this work at a subconscious level, because when you look at, just at the previous generations and where we are currently at in society and in the world, people have been living unconsciously for hundreds of years now, maybe more, but definitely in the last century or so, living very, very unconsciously, taken on a lot of conditioning, been very programmed to think a certain way, live a certain way. And I think that, I don't think it's any mistake that now a lot of these modalities are surfacing and becoming more popular, because I think that really is the work that we need to be doing now on a collective level. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I just want to speak about the ancestors, okay? Because what I'm finding with the work I'm doing is very commonly the issue is ancestral energy. Right? People have done a lot of work. They've done 10 years of work or 20 years of work. They've done 20 years of counseling to deal with their terror. This is a true story. A lady, she'd done actually 10 years of counseling, therapy, and other modalities because she had terror from day one. And she came, and then I did a session for her counselor in the Gold Coast. And he had such a major shift. He started sending me all his clients. Anyway, but he sent this lady first. She was the first one. And she still had this terror after, so much work. And anyway, so we just did a session, and she described what's happening. She just feels fear. She's kind of anxious around people and blah, blah, blah. So I wrote a statement around that, and I asked. So there was 5 or 6 or 7 trapped emotions. I can't remember. But one of them was inherited terror from, grandfather or great-grandfather, something to do. I can't remember what happened. Or it might have been grandmother, I think. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was from like a grandmother during the war, and she was sexually attacked by whatever. Right? So anyway, so she goes away, and then I message her the next day to check on her, and then she finally gets back to me after 4 days. She calls me and she goes, "I'm sorry, Steve. I didn't want to talk to you because I couldn't believe what was happening." And she goes, "It's now been 4 days," and she goes, "I've had terror every single day of my life. It drives my whole life." She goes, I have no terror.
Wow. It's amazing.
It was the inherited terror, right? And it's very common that's the missing ingredient, right? And this modality finds it really, really easily. And, and I think in these times also, it's like we need to clear this ancestral stuff because it's just going to repeat with your kids, your grandkids. It just keeps going. And it's a different time now. I think it just needs to be cleared.
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, and it reminds me a lot of, again, very different, but I love, and I think that's one of the reasons I do love emotion code so much, because it does also address that. And I also believe that that's a huge component, especially when I remember hearing years ago that a lot of the conditioning, a lot of the stuff in TV and movies and the way that the world's set up is to keep us in a state of trauma. But I didn't fully understand that until I understood the ancestral and generational aspect.
Yeah.
And now I get it, because we can be perpetuating a state of trauma that we've inherited, not necessarily experienced.
If we've inherited it, we will perpetuate it.
Yeah.
And it'll happen early.
100%.
Yeah. And, and I was going to say, it's very much like, have you experienced family constellation at all?
Yes.
Yeah, that's another very, very powerful, because, that's sort of just addressing like the generational stuff.
Totally.
And it, very, very powerful. And absolutely, I'm totally with you that it's again, something that's very necessary for us to be doing this work now at this time to release
Absolutely.
a lot of that, so that, and we just had Rachel Vaughan on, and she's talking about this shift that humanity and the earth is currently going through. And I think that's a big part of the shift is a lot of people are doing this work now, and every individual that does this work and releases stuff especially from the ancestral line. Because I believe, and are you on this same school of thought? I always hear this. It seems to be that if for the work that we do, you can heal 7 generations before and 7 generations after. Is that your sort of same school of thought?
You heal all generations.
Okay.
All generations.
Yeah.
Forward and back.
Yeah.
All generations.
Awesome. Yeah. Even better. I like that answer even better. I'm just going to go with that now.
And sideways. So if you have 2 siblings and you all inherited abandonment because your mother was sent to the orphanage, she was abandoned at age 5, and she's trapped abandonment. Like, it's a big deal. It has to be a life-defining event for that person, your ancestor, to trap it, for it to be inherited. It has to be like their life was going this way, and then bang. It can't be just a superficial trapped emotion. It's a life-defining emotion. Those are the ones that get passed down. But if you release it for you, and you have a brother and a sister, and they were same mother, of course, if they inherited it, they will also release it. When you release it, it releases for them and all the ancestors.
Amazing.
Their kids. If you have grandkids already, everybody. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's super important, and the way I like to describe it is this: how important is the inherited one? Is when you're born with an inherited trapped emotion, it's the root of a weed, right, or a plant. It's the root ball. It's the root ball. Okay, so you're born with it, and then you got this root ball of abandonment, right? If you got that inherited abandonment, then it's going to play early on, and so then you're age 3, and something happens and you get abandoned, right? And they sent you off to a school to live somewhere else or whatever, some sort of abandonment, right? So then you get your first flower, right? So the flowers of that root ball is what happens in this life. I got abandoned at 3. I got abandoned at 8. I got abandoned. My first girlfriend abandoned me. My husband, my wife, whatever, right? These are the flowers. Now, and people tend to deal with these.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like you go to counseling and I got that one, I got that one. You do 20 years of abandonment work. It's like, I've done my abandonment work, I'm clear. Then the universe goes, wham, abandonment. Because you got to get the root.
Yeah.
It's the actual cause of why it happened in your life. Right? The inherited ones are they're like the foundation of the house of what plays out in your life.
Yeah, that's such a great explanation. That's a really good analogy, because I think that's going to make a lot of sense to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And often I get so many people coming in and go, I don't know why I feel this way. Like even that lady with the terror, when she called me, she goes, Stephen, I knew it was a woman. I never thought it was mine. And I knew it was a woman. It was like a grandmother, a great grandmother, right? So people come in, and so we end up blaming ourselves. We're like, why do I feel this way? How come I can't fix myself? I've done 15 years of abandonment work, and I still feel abandoned. I'm so bad. I'm no good. I can't, what's wrong with me? There's something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with them. It's not their energy.
Yeah.
Right? They're born with it, or they absorbed it. Like often what's playing out is what we absorbed from other people. As kids, from our parents, we'll absorb their stuff. When we're married, we absorb our partner's stuff, and then we blame ourselves, right? So we need more compassion for ourselves. And,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is so critical. I can't underline this enough. This is the work, capital T, capital W. When you address the energy of the situation, you're addressing the real situation.
That's it.
If you just divorce that person and, go find another one, and the situation carries with you because you bring that energy
coming
with you.
It's coming with you.
Yeah.
And it's going to play out again because the universe will bring you that person to show you everything you haven't met.
Yeah.
And relationships, I think, are one of the I would say the most, what's the word I'm looking for? I think if people really want to see what's going on for them, look at your relationships, not just your romantic relationships. Look at your relationships with your family, with your partner, with your friends. And they're usually the clearest indicators of where you're at because they are always just a mirror to you.
Absolutely.
And yeah. And
it's heightened.
Absolutely. And you'll see the patterns pretty clearly. Like both Isaac and I, when we met, we talked a lot about our previous relationships, and we both very clearly saw, and again, when we started doing the work on ourselves, we both very clearly saw the patterns that we were playing out in all of our previous relationships. Right. And until you talk about this in your book as well, until you have the awareness, like the awareness comes first. You've got to have the awareness, and then you can go deeper into it and heal it and transmute it. Right. But yeah, you've got to have that awareness, and I definitely implore people, if you've got an issue that keeps showing up, you're not sure why, look at your relationships, look at the patterns, and that'll give you your answer. Right
on. Yeah. And often, people are coming in because they're having relationship issues, and and they come in and they're like, that person did that thing to me, and it might be a brother or a sister or a lover or whatever. And that bastard, and I've never gotten over it, and now I don't have a house, and he's taken all the money, and whatever the story is, right? So the thing that I point out to them pretty quickly is, what's happening in that moment. If you got triggered in that moment, it's because something's already inside of you. So whatever is being triggered was already there. Right? So usually what's happening in the moment, and we're blaming that person in that moment, like it's happening now. And if you get triggered, it's because it happened before. It's something you didn't meet before. This person is just a situation to show you what you haven't met. Okay? So we're often blaming the person who's come to show us what we haven't met.
Yeah.
Right? And so then we do the emotion code session, and then the subconscious identifies whatever caused this trigger, or whatever caused the situation. And they, sure enough, will find it has very little to do with this person. Yes, there might be one or two things trapped because, the guy hit her or whatever. But it's all started in the past, from ancestral, from absorbed, from their childhood that something happened. Right?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. I mean, people are so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the mind is so interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And there's been one way of looking at it, you could almost say some religions were built around just not dealing with shit. just find a way to just pay the priest. He's going to, say the thing and put this on your head, and then you're done. You're good. And you never have to actually go and deal with it. And then they never have to deal with their stuff. And it's just, that's been inherited, but now it's getting very real. And for those that have experienced actual healing and actually taken total responsibility and been like, look, it's something within me that's drawing this out from other people. I'm seeing it because it's in me too.
Where's the conflict? Where's all of our experiences happening? Our experiences happen in me. Right? Yeah. There's somebody out there, but the experience happens in me. Right? And where's in German New Medicine, right? If there's a conflict, and where is that conflict? It's in me.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to resolve that conflict. Right.
Yeah.
So suffering is, the suffering. What that really means is you have an experience with resistance.
Yeah.
You cannot have suffering without resistance.
Interesting.
It's very, very simple.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I've heard it described electrically, and then that kind of like resistance in a circuit. If you have a kink in a wire or some damage to it, it'll burn the cable.
Right.
Or the idea that like a magnet's basically traumatized metal. They hit it with a lightning bolt, creates a polarity around it, and now you have a magnet. Now you have something that attracts shit to it. So, and
I like that.
Isn't that
well,
good?
It actually is
some Topher garbage.
Here's my magnet.
Oh, there
And
you
it
go.
does.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I don't really say that it attracts things, but I say that the universe will see it in you.
Yeah.
And then the universe lovingly will go, we need to let Steve know.
Yeah.
He's got trapped, whatever, sorrow or grief or whatever. And so it brings me another experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is such a good way to explain it because we are energetic beings, first and foremost. We are energy. The physical form is just a representation of that, a manifestation of that, rather.
That's it.
So it's a really good analogy.
Yeah, it's all
The
starting to make
electrical.
sense.
Yeah.
Bit by bit.
Yes.
But it doesn't have to make sense for healing to take place. Like a lot of that can happen in the cognitive mind. Because I know some people too that can understand all this stuff and know all this stuff, but then don't actually get in and like do the work. And I was like that a little bit, but once the pain became too much, or the frustration with how my life kept hitting this repeat became too frustrating to bear any longer. It's like, okay, I can know everything, but I have to actually do something. Like that's where the change happens.
And the ego is so clever. Okay.
Yeah.
So the ego is literally separation, and it's even separation from yourself. Right. So to be authentically you and to be whole is to be healed. The ego is very clever, and it will devise a way to keep you from going there. Because if you become whole, then it has no role. Right. And so here's an example. Right. So let's just use the spiritual community as an example. There's lots and lots of people that will go to one workshop, to the next workshop, to the next workshop, to the next workshop. And they show up on the Monday morning at the cafe with their friends. And it's like, oh, I did this da-da-da release thing, and I feel so amazing, and da-da-da, and whatever, right? But what's actually happening is they never actually go in. Right? So the ego can kind of devise a way to keep you from meeting yourself, meeting that part of yourself that you couldn't meet. And so it's a continual ride of, it's just one example, right? There's many ways this happens, but we can use the ego can use spirituality as a way to avoid going in.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? That's just an example. So yes, and what's happening is resistance. It's like they don't know what's there, and they're afraid of it. They know, the conscious mind when it traps something that was very, very full on, life defining, it never wants to go there again. Right? Never wants to go there again. So it takes a lot of courage, but to step through the door of resistance, and when you step through the door of resistance and you meet that thing, it's so simple.
Yeah.
It's so simple.
I know. Well, it's funny. Sorry to cut you off there, but it is so simple. And
it's so simple.
I learned this a long time ago through some very different spiritual practices than the ones I do now. But I actually learned that it's us. Life is actually very simple. It's very simple principles. It's simple stuff, but we are the ones that overcomplicate everything.
Totally, absolutely. I know better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But no, I've got to go and do this. What was it? I remember hearing about a spiritual group, and I don't know too much about what they're called, but they called something a death run. And their path to spiritual enlightenment was literally running up the stairs with like jugs of water and just endlessly doing that day after day after day until they died, essentially. And you can do that, or you can get to the subconscious mind, get to know the deep core of who you are, and it's much faster. And me being a manifesting generator, I like to take the shortcuts and get down to the nitty gritty.
Well, I jokingly say this, like I did counseling and therapy, and something inside me just, even though I love it and it saved my life, right? It didn't pull me in, right? And I got, my father's side is German, so I got 50% German blood, right? So I'm like, it's not efficient enough, so then this landed on my lap, and I'm like, as soon as I heard it, I knew I was doing this work, because that was it. It's like, it's just direct. You just ask.
Efficient.
You ask the source. Why not ask the source?
Yeah.
The subconscious is the source that knows. It's the only thing that knows. Go to 100 doctors. They don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Unless they tap into your subconscious,
Right.
which they don't do, right? And it's the only source that knows. So why not ask that source? It's a supercomputer. You know, I just happen to be a software engineer, so I'm really good with supercomputers.
Yeah. I was thinking about that earlier. Right? It's like you're the soul's IT department.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I like
That's
that.
great. You gotta put that on
that.
your. You gotta put that on your. That'll be on your. Next time you get some cards printed out, that'll be your title now, Steve.
I like that. That's good. That's good. So
Love
it's literally like writing a Google statement for your subconscious mind, right? It will serve up the most important first, and so on and so forth. And it does it lovingly. It does it well. It's a binary computer, so I don't know if there's love there, but it just does it because it's a machine that it will efficiently do it. It's happy to do it if you know how to talk to it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's so simple. To me, it's just, none of this stuff is miraculous. I'm not doing anything. Your subconscious mind's doing it. I'm just decoding what it's saying. Right? And I hold a space, and I have no agenda except to be clear and not get in the way. Right.
Yeah.
So that's really what it is. And I know that I just, in the divine's really doing it. It's really a divine thing.
Yeah.
And in the session, I invoke the divine and ask it to tell us what's happening.
Yeah.
And it does.
So, just curious, what's your views on the divine and the universe and God and all that, and this subconscious part? Is this kind of like an interconnected form of that, or is like my subconscious, let's say, different from the universe?
It's your subconscious. I think it's your subconscious is yours in this body, you could say, this vehicle. But behind the subconscious is the conscious, your consciousness, right? And there is one consciousness, and we are that consciousness, right?
Yeah.
So everything's the one consciousness, right?
Yeah.
But the subconscious mind, I think, I don't really know. I've never thought of this before, but I just look at it as a supercomputer for you. So it's very specific to you. It's like a mini computer inside this body. You could say that's for you.
Yeah.
And it knows everything about you. Your beliefs, your conditioning, everything.
Yeah.
And so you're manifesting from there. You're manifesting from there.
Absolutely.
But we are all connected with consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
And I don't know IT very much, but it kind of sounds like almost like nodes on a network or something.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and I love that you said that, Steve, because that's one of the quotes I often use from Carl Jung is that we attract what we are, not what we want, and that is very, very rooted in the unconscious, and that's why
right on.
We often attract the things that we for the example you used earlier. Someone that often ends up with narcissistic men.
Yeah.
No woman goes out looking for a narcissistic man. You don't go, I really want a guy that's going to treat me like shit and lie to me. And you don't go
manipulate
consciously.
Me.
Exactly. It's not a conscious choice. It's unconscious because, again, if that's a story or often an experience, because what I've noticed a lot with women that end up with narcissistic men, they either had a narcissistic father or that's usually primarily the case. But even if in that family unit, the father's sort of not in the picture, if the mother has always been with narcissistic men and you're inheriting all that stuff, it'll just keep playing out that way until you go, like you said, you go to the source, you go to the core. Why is this happening? And you heal it and you release whatever it is that needs to be released.
Right
but that's
Another way to say that was very well said. Another way to say it, and often I share this with some people that come here, is that the outer is a reflection of the inner. Right? So whatever's manifesting on the outside in your life is just a reflection of your inner state.
Yeah.
Right? And then the opposite is true. So then you have the session or sessions, you clear away whatever that pain body was, and then suddenly their reality shifts. So this lady that came this weekend who has extreme anxiety and PTSD, extreme stress, right? And we did emotion code, but we did a trauma session on her, right? And we released 5 trapped traumas in the physical body. And then she wrote to me. It was 2 days after. She had 6 days of body processing. Second day, and she's like, I can't believe it. I had no anxiety. I've had no anxiety today, all day. She goes, I was tired and I was sleeping a bit, right? Because the body's processing.
Yeah.
And she goes, I woke up no anxiety. I had no anxiety through the day. I got a call from this person who usually triggers me. I had no anxiety. And then she goes like this, right? This is the outer is a reflection of the inner. She goes, I can't believe it. Because she has a narcissistic sister, right? And whenever the sister calls, she freaks. I can't believe it. I got an email from my sister. And my sister asked if we could come up to the Brisbane for Christmas. And she said she will pay for the hotel. And da-da-da-da. Like, right? So this is how the reality shifts. Right?
Yeah.
The outer is a reflection of the inner. You shift the inner, and then there's no need for the universe to bring that experience again.
Yeah.
Right? It's bringing the experience to show you what you haven't met. If you meet that and release it, which she did, this woman, it was 2 days and her whole reality shifted in this area, right?
And I love that you shared that example, because I think for people that are new to this stuff, I think people would be very shocked to actually experience how quickly the shift can happen. We've seen it, and again, with different modalities, but again, these modalities that are going straight to the core, going straight to the source, as you say, and you're shifting these things in the unconscious. It can literally be, like you said, days where things are changing. Yep. I was actually talking to someone over the weekend where he was saying that him and his partner have experienced things where, they run their business together and, they might be at odds about something with the business. And the second, he's like, I'm not even exaggerating, but the second we sort it out, orders will start coming through for their business. So it does. It happens very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spectacular.
I'm in awe of it, really. I'm in awe of it. Like even, when I hear back from my clients, I'm just in awe of it. I'm like, because I'm not doing it, right?
Yeah.
I'm just good at getting out of the way and facilitating.
Yeah.
And it just happens. It's much more beyond me. It's their subconscious minds doing it. It wants to do it, and the ancestors get involved. I feel them when they're here. And the ancestors love this stuff, right? Because they had it tough, man. We have a fairly, easy life in a certain way in terms of comforts and stuff. But they had hard lives. So they love it because they didn't mean to trap this and pass it down. They're all watching, right? And they just love it, and they just party when we release it. That's what I think. They just love it. They're like, yes, finally. Right?
Amazing. Well, thank you for the work that you do, Steve. We, again, personally love Emotion Code. We love everything that you do. Love the book. So for anyone that wants to work with you, get the book, I don't know about the stuff that you do, the workshops you do overseas. Yep.
Nice. Yep.
Layerconsulting.com.
Yep.
LAYER Consulting.
Yeah. And do you work with people from all over, all over the world?
Yeah, I do. I'd say 75% of what I'm doing is online.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
These days, It used to be the opposite. It's all through word of mouth. I get one client, I get 2 new clients.
Yeah.
Right. It's just, it's amazing. So I'm doing a lot of work in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, overseas a bit, mainly Australia at the moment, some overseas.
Yeah.
Very cool.
But mainly more and more in the cities. Gold Coast, I've got a lot of Gold Coast clients.
Well, that's good to know, because the cities is where they need the work the most.
That's it. That's it. Totally.
Yeah. And is your book available through your website as well?
Yeah. So if you go to my website and message me, I can send you a book. It's not in the store yet. Also, you can get it through Amazon. Right?
Okay, cool.
Okay.
It's called, here, I'll hold it up. Looks like this.
Inner Sky.
Right, it's
Stephen
got
Layer.
the dandelion on the bottom, Inner Sky.
Yeah.
Now, there's another book called Inner Sky by Stephen something else, so make sure it's Stephen Layer.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, where am I? Where's my name?
Yeah.
Oh, at the
We could
top.
probably even just link directly to your.
Yeah, well,
To your
we'll pop.
Amazon.
Yeah, we'll definitely have your website in the show notes so people can just easily click
Yeah.
on that. And
If you're overseas, probably better to get it on Amazon US or Amazon Australia or whatever. And Australia, you can order through me. I got I think one box left.
Yeah.
yeah,
So
Yeah, it's so good. And I was even thinking, as in the beginning, I was like, when we have kids, and I'll probably gently lean on my daughter to have her read it. She's 21, but I think she'd be open to it. But I'm like, it's simple enough. You could read this to children when they're old enough to understand
very-
disease and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And put
The way
that
the book-
seed in their head.
yeah.
yeah,
The way the book came through was really interesting. It's another story, but I wrote the book once, and I knew it wasn't what I wanted, and then I shelved it, and then the book just came through in 2 weeks.
wow,
It just came through me. I just connected
Wow.
and closed my eyes, and boom, it was done. It was done in less than 2 weeks,
Wow.
and it's a conversation. It's a conversation with a woman facing a life challenging situation. And
Yeah.
it's really a very, very simple read. It'll bring you in, especially if you don't have, it's not geared for advanced people. It's really geared for the common person who suddenly is faced with a situation,
yeah.
Yeah.
right? Challenging situation.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's such a great book because that's often the time where it's too late at that point to like go and do all this research and go to all these workshops, and it's like when you're faced with something like that, you really need to, and like you said, it is very simple, but to get someone to understand these concepts, that's I love that about this book is that it's
Right on.
it's very simple, very easy to understand.
Right on, right on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for
Thanks
joining us,
for
Steve,
being on,
and
Steve.
we'll
Thank
see
you,
you
guys.
around because you're our howdy neighbor.
We are. See you at the market, farmer's market.
Absolutely.
See you
So, guys, and for anyone that's wanting to experience emotion code that hasn't before, especially for people that have any kind of pain in the body, especially chronic pain, I have heard the most amazing stories of people that have had one emotion code session and the pain that they're feeling in their body has completely healed. So, yeah, it's amazing. It's really powerful stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. If you've got serious health issues or just emotions being stuck, like you can't get over emotional triggers, or maybe you've had just a pattern of relationships, of negative issues in your relationships, marital problems that have been going on for way too long.
And also, can I just say, because I think what I've used emotion code for the most is when I'm feeling like I can't move forward in a particular area of my life. If you're feeling stuck and stagnant,
Yeah, exactly.
it's often like these trapped emotions are what's holding you back from stepping forward into something new.
Yeah, because even some of it, I even believe, like even if you change your perception of that emotion, it's still trapped. And sometimes those are better off just released.
What I also love, which I touched on in the interview, is the coupling of different modalities that kind of work hand in hand. And, what you just said really speaks to that, because when I came to Psych K, I not long after that came to Emotion Code. And I just love that the Psych K element is working more on the beliefs and the perceptions. And, and what Steve said, from the German New Medicine perspective, that's where the conflicts come from. It's within the psyche. And then Emotion Code deals with the trapped emotions in the body. And it's kind of more focused on that. But I just find they go so well hand in hand with each other. And for me, working with those two things together has given me some really, really profound shifts.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the work. This is a gift that you can give yourself and give that to your family, your spouse, your future generations, and even your past generations. I love the idea of what he said about when you, let's say, close the chapter, when you release one of these trapped emotions. I've had an experience where an ancestor was there with me and was celebrating in that moment. And it was profound. And I'm so grateful that I did that. And I just think how cool is it that we live in this time where now we can consciously go through this. clear out some of the junk in the whole family's closet, and give that gift to our whole entire family, and really address these things. No more looking away. You know, that it's like that movie King Arthur, and the subconscious has all these dreams and all this stuff, the memories that were forgotten from the trauma of his childhood. And he's working with this shaman, the mage, and she's telling him, you know, did you see everything you needed to see when he went on his little vision quest and all this stuff, trying to unlock his potential so he can actually take his sword and live out his destiny. And he can't get through it. He can't freaking face what happened. And she said, did you see everything you needed to see? We all look away. I look away. So no more looking away, you know, and you don't have to do it alone, and you don't have to actually relive and re-traumatize yourself as well. It's just, you know, doing the work, but it's just little steps like this with very profound, efficient ways is the way forward, I think.
Absolutely. So for anyone that wants to work with Steve, and another reason I love this is that you can do it from anywhere. You can do it. And I've actually worked with Steve in person and online. And it was funny because after my first session I did in person, I was traveling down to Sydney the following week or so. And that was my next session. And I was a little bit hesitant, thinking, I don't know if it's going to be as good if I'm not in person. And if anything, I still felt the connection, you know, when he kind of taps into my subconscious mind. And I had just as a profound shift as when I was working in person. So you really can do this work from anywhere. And Stephen's a beautiful facilitator for this. So head to his website. We've got that in the show notes. We've also included the link to Amazon where you can purchase his book, Inner Sky, another highly recommended read, especially it's actually a really good gift to give someone where you kind of want to give them maybe a little nudge, like, this is a different way of doing things, because it's a really easy read. It's very simple for people to understand that don't have an advanced...
well, especially if they're dealing with cancer.
Yeah.
It deals directly with his story with cancer, but there's so many other ways that this gets applied as well.
Yeah. Well, and any kind of chronic condition, I think, like you said, where people have like tried everything. And if they're at a point where they're actually willing to be more open to new things, it's a really good book to read. Like, honestly, you could probably read it in a few days because it's such an easy read. So highly recommend that. Head to the link in the show notes if you'd like to purchase that. And
what do we got going on next week?
Oh, this is a good one. So this is our last pre-recorded episode, and we're just about to get back into interviews. So we'll be recording and releasing in real time pretty much now. And so the next episode is the one we've been sitting on for the longest. And this is the episode that we recorded with Erin, who is Dave Armstrong's wife. And we recorded this one quite a while ago, but due to the nature of her work and the industry that she works in, she drops a lot of truth bombs. So the main topic is based around beauty standards and what's sort of projected onto us, especially as women. But a lot of that, from Erin's perspective, is coming from, you know, she's a script writer. She works for some of Hollywood's biggest streaming services and production companies. And so what she sees in the stuff that we're watching in film and TV, how so much of that is programming us to, you know, these certain standards.
Yeah, so, and that's something we love talking about, which is undoing the conditioning that we've all undergone and we continuously are exposed to. But yeah, we'll peel back the layer. We'll lift the hood a little bit, shall we say, on how that conditioning is actually intentionally placed on everyone. And we'll discuss a little bit about how to deal with it. And then if you go back to our past episodes with Psych K and Emotion Code, those are great ways to deal with this condition.
And the nervous system. Our episode with Sophie, because that's all, like we spoke about in this episode, it's all basically the same thing, just packaged up differently, described in different ways. To
see the picture. So we've identified some of the problems, how it works. We got some professionals that have firsthand knowledge and secondhand knowledge of what's going on and how to unplug and how to really get yourself out of the matrix.
Yeah. So if you want a little bit of insider info straight from the horse's mouth of the industry,
from the bowels of hell,
AKA
comes one rider, not a horse rider, but a pen rider. Yeah. Hit the like button, share this.
We'll catch you next time, guys.
Peace.
Bye.